What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video and another audio only review. And don't worry, this will not become a norm here on the channel. I will be getting back to my more traditional way of doing reviews here on the channel in just a little bit. But yeah, I've been feeling a little bit more laid back in the last week and a half or two, and I kind of just enjoyed being able to cover stuff here on the channel while just talking to the mic without having to worry about the camera and editing anything together. Not gonna lie, this is my fourth or fifth time trying to record this because I feel like my mind's been a little scatterbrained, but I haven't filmed in a few days, so that's probably why, or recorded in any way, shape, or form. If you're new to the channel, I want to welcome you for stopping by and clicking on this video. I want to welcome you also to hit that subscribe button because I talk about all things movies here on the channel. I do vlogs, live streams, and all that jazz. And for anybody who is a returning viewer, a big thanks to you guys for coming back. Please hit that like button, comment your thoughts, and get ready to hear my thoughts on these two films that I got to check out just a little bit early that both come out later this week on May 6th. You have The Twin that's going to be dropping exclusively on Shudder as a new original, and then you have Wuhan Wuhan, which is a new documentary that takes us into the early months of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic in Wuhan, China, kind of showing us what was going on there at the time. That film will be releasing in select theaters as well as on VOD, digital on demand, all that where you can rent and purchase it. We're going to start this off by jumping into my thoughts on The Twin, which takes place in Finland and is actually a Finnish film with American actors in it. And yeah, I do want to make it clear right out of the gate that I'm not going to know how to pronounce some of these names 100%, but I'm going to try my best. And yeah, this is a movie that I can say right now I actually really enjoyed. I just finished watching it with my fiance. Yeah, this movie does a good job of having that horror element, giving you something familiar, but also kind of giving you a twist. And by the time the movie was over, I thought it was a pretty good time. It was definitely one of the better Shudder streamers that I've gotten to see a little bit early, one of the better early screeners that I've gotten to see for Shudder, and I really thoroughly enjoyed the way the film was put together, and it kept me engaged from beginning to end. This film is written and directed by Taneli Mustonen, who wrote it alongside Aleksi Hiverinen. I believe that's how you pronounce their name. You also have a great cast in this film by Teresa Palmer, Stephen Cree, Barbara Martin, and Tristan Ruggeri. And I really enjoyed the music in this film as well. The composer is Panu Altio, and then I really enjoyed the cinematography as well, so I definitely wanted to highlight the cinematographer, which is Daniel Lindholm. And so yeah, overall, I really enjoyed the people that were involved in this film. I thought the performances were really strong, with Teresa Palmer being the biggest highlight without a doubt. The first thing I ever saw her in was I Am Number 4, and I enjoyed her in that film, but she wasn't given a super abundance to do outside of look pretty cool and have some badass action. But in this film, I think she was given a pretty meaty role to kind of bite into and really give a real performance that is kind of going all over the place from the beginning of the film to where we are at the very end. And I feel like she was given a lot of really rich material to really show her acting chops. So in a lot of ways, I feel like this is one of the better films that I've seen her in. Maybe not the best film I've seen her in, but one of the better performances I've seen her give in a film, because I feel like the role really allowed for her to kind of have a lot of meat on the bones. This is a film that I think might go under the radar for a lot of people because it's going to be exclusively on Shudder. But if you do have the horror streaming service Shudder, I do recommend checking it out. This is a movie that I did have a good time with. Like I said, it comes out later this week on May 6th. And if you're listening to this review after you've already seen it, because it's already on Shudder, then let me know what you thought. You know, did you like this movie? Did you not like this movie? The basic premise of this film, without getting too deep into spoilers, is the movie opens up and we have a family who has just lost a loved one to a car accident. We have a mother played by Teresa Palmer, a father played by Stephen Cree, and a son played by Tristan Ruggeri, and they have twins, except one of the twins has just passed away. And that's where we start our movie, as they actually move to Finland to try to start a new life and kind of move on from the memories of their son and not be tormented by being stuck where they initially were raising their family. You know, the memories of, you know, having that child in the home were kind of killing the wife, and they decided to move somewhere else to try to start new, try to start a new life, try to start a new path. And as the movie progresses, some weird stuff starts to happen, specifically around their son, and that's all I'll leave it at. But yeah, I found this to be a pretty good movie. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I enjoyed the cinematography, the look, the feel of the movie. There's a good use of practical effects. There are some slow moments throughout the course of the film, and there were elements that took me out of it from time to time. But overall, I found it to be a good, enjoyable watch. I found the performances to be a good time. There is a bit of a cliche kind of element to it as far as the horror genre, but I do think that the way a movie wraps up definitely does something very different with the genre, definitely does something different with the story, and even with the stuff that I was able to predict as we were following the story, the end kind of takes the carpet from beneath you and tells you a different kind of recontextualized story with the way that the movie ends. It's one of those movies that has an ending that kind of makes you look at the entire movie in a different way, which kind of made me think maybe I'll rewatch this movie at some point to kind of see how I view it from a different angle, even though I can't be honest and say I'm not necessarily running to rewatch this movie. But yeah, overall, as it goes, I did enjoy the film. I enjoyed a lot about how it was made and the production value of it. I enjoyed a lot about the performances, specifically from Teresa Palmer, and it is a film that I do recommend for people to check out. Moving on, we have Wuhan Wuhan, which again comes out on May 6th as well, and will be available in select theaters as well as on digital, VOD, all that jazz where you can rent and purchase it. It's been running through different festivals since November of 2021 and is officially going to be getting its release, like I said, on May 6th. It's directed by Young Chang, and this is a film that I think is going to be a bit polarizing for some, because I spoke to my buddy Mike from Did You See That, who got to check this movie out a little bit before me, or he watched it a little bit before me, and I haven't watched his review for it as of recording this. I like to tend to watch my friends' reviews after I actually have done mine, and you know, I know that what he told me was that he actually quite enjoyed it. And you know, for me, I actually found that I was struggling with it because I saw, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, but when I was typing it on Google, I believe I saw that on Rotten Tomatoes it currently has 100%. Now obviously it hasn't gotten a wide release yet, so that will most likely change, but it's had the festival runs. And this film is executive produced by Donnie Yen, you know, the popular Donnie Yen. And yeah, overall I found this to be a very well made documentary, though I can't lie, I have to be honest with my own personal experience with it. I found it to be a little bit boring at times. There were elements about the film that I did kind of find myself being taken out of. I wasn't always 100%, you know, engulfed in watching it. You know, I was watching it, but you know, there was definitely an element that felt like I was like watching it for the sake of talking about it here in this video. And so that definitely is something I have to be honest about. With that said though, I found that the cinematography was really good. You know, when they did shoot these great landscapes of the city and all that stuff, I found it to be a good time. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Wuhan Wuhan takes us into Wuhan, China, and focuses on the first couple months, or a little time in the first few months of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we get to see kind of a bunch of different angles of this whole situation as we follow a guy who's about to be a father. You know, you have a husband and wife who are about to have a child. You have the frontline workers who are, you know, dealing with these various like isolation camps in a way, these isolation hospitals that they're kind of temporarily opening up in various convention centers and things like that. We also get to follow some individuals in actual hospitals, and we get to follow some individuals who are actually being isolated and being put into these temporary hospitals. And it is really crazy being from, you know, the United States of America to see how different, you know, COVID was handled there versus how it's handled here, and even how it's still being handled over there in a lot of ways. But I can't imagine any of that ever flying here, and of course the governments are incredibly different. But you know, as I was telling my buddy Mike from Did You See That, as I messaged him after I saw the movie, you know, I told him one of the things I struggled with while watching it was, I feel like this is a movie that will be appreciated by many, but I think this is a movie that I think will be appreciated further in the future when people are looking back on this time, because I think that anybody who is just constantly on their phones or on the computer or watch TV, the news, in the last few years, we have been so inundated with, you know, different articles and agenda pushing things and conversations, and this person doesn't believe that, and this person believes this, everything around COVID-19 and all the tragedy around it, obviously, and the fear around it. It was interesting to jump back to that time in this documentary, which was probably the most interesting thing for me about it, was being able to jump back to that time and kind of remember the panic. Of course, it's different. You know, China, I think, handled it obviously way different, but here in the States, I remember in the first couple of months there being this internal fear, when I would go places. And you'd come back and you'd want to instantly wash your hands, and you'd want to be kind of a little careful. And now I know a lot of places are obviously still like that, but I live in Florida, where pretty much all mask mandates and requirements for vaccinations in a lot of ways have been kind of lifted. And I have gotten COVID once before, earlier this year, at actually the very start of the year, and it definitely sucked. I made it through, but it's just kind of interesting to hop back to that time and see that panic and that fear that was within all of us, I think, just as a global kind of situation, and see where we are today, just a few years later. And of course, it's tragic. I think the worst part about the whole COVID thing was, and is, the mystery of who it's going to affect in a bad way versus others who are going to just get, a fever or a cold or whatever the case may be. And so in the case of this movie, I found it to be, again, a really well put together documentary. It's not necessarily informative as much as it is just kind of interesting to look into and kind of see from a different angle. This isn't one of those documentaries that I felt like I learned a whole lot out of. I definitely learned some facts about certain things about Wuhan in specific, but since this is more about showing individuals in the situation, it is not one of those documentaries where you feel like you've walked away informed, which for me are my personal favorite documentaries. Going into it, I definitely felt for what was going on, and I felt for the people that were sick, and those who you see in the documentary that would eventually end up dying. Of course, that is a really tragic situation with everything that's happened in the last few years. But as far as my overall opinion on this documentary, again, I thought it was well shot. I thought that it was well put together, but I never truly found myself overly invested in watching it. I found myself, more kind of just mentally exhausted by everything about COVID at this point, and that's my own personal experience. I think it's going to be 100% different depending on the individual. I think it's important stuff to get out there, and I think depending on the individual, some people are going to think, some pretty negative things about it depending on your stance on COVID and all that jazz. But as a movie in and of itself, I thought it was a well-made documentary. I just didn't necessarily find it to be all that enticing to watch. And again, I felt kind of mentally exhausted watching it simply because of how much we've been inundated with the COVID-19 stuff in the last few years. So yeah, guys, I hope you guys enjoy listening to my thoughts on the Twin and Wuhan Wuhan. Wuhan Wuhan, I probably will never watch it again. I can't necessarily give it a big recommendation, but if it sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out. Again, both of these movies come out on May 6th. With a Twin, I do recommend it, and I think if you have Shudder, it's worth checking out. And if you have something like a Shudder, maybe free trial at the moment, and you are looking for something new to check out the Twin. I think it's a pretty interesting film. I think it does something different with the genre, even when it does feel kind of conventional and predictable. I think the end kind of wraps it up to kind of make it a pretty good watch, and it kept me on my toes and engaged throughout. So that's going to be my thoughts on the Twin and Wuhan Wuhan. Definitely leave your thoughts down below. Did you like this? Did you not like this? And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.